Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this webcast. Today, we will talk about the radical workplace shift, 6 ways technology supercharges employee experience. My name is Cynthia from We Connect Global Leaders, and I'm happy to welcome everyone. We will have 2 speakers today. Patrick, he is Chief Technology Officer at LiveTiles, and Paul, the Global Head of Communication at LiveTiles. Before I hand over to our speakers, a few brief organizational notes from my side. All participants are muted on this webcast. However, you are very welcome to write your questions and comments at any time under the Questions tab at the bottom of the screen. We then take the time to answer your questions in a Q&A session after the presentation. That's already it from my side, and I hand over to our first speaker.
Thank you, Cynthia, for the introduction, and welcome everybody also from my side. My name is Patrick Puntener. I'm the Global CTO at LiveTiles, based in Basel, Switzerland. I was the former co-founder of Cycle, which is now part of LiveTiles, and I'm in the SharePoint and intranet business since more than 20 years. And with me, I have Paul Connelly. Paul, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, good morning, everybody, and thanks very much for joining us. My name is Paul Connelly. I'm based in Ireland, working for LiveTiles as their Global Head of Communications. I have a long career in communications, heading up both the communications teams for United Nations agencies and the International Red Cross, and worked a lot in storytelling, and particularly passionate about tapping into the power of communities and using technology to do that. So really working very much in the mindset of the communicator over many years, and looking forward to this presentation here this morning. As you can see, LiveTiles has a wide range of customers across many sectors, a lot of well-known brands that you'll be seeing there on your screen. We are a workplace technology company offering expertise and software solutions designed to boost employee experience, productivity, and innovation. We're a global company with a very strong presence in EMEA, and really working to solve the challenges around employee experience. What we're going to be talking to you about this morning, if we can move slides, please, Patrick. Over the last 12 months, it's been a turbulent time for everybody, and we've witnessed several clear and transformative trends across our global customer base. We have a global customer base of more than 1,400 enterprise-grade clients. And these trends include, number one, employee experience is shifting rapidly from physical to the digital. There's been a swift and widespread acceleration of the digitalization of work. There's been a major, and I would say welcome upward trend in the inclusion and prioritization of frontline and deskless workers, and the understanding that the digital workplace is now very much a part of the battle for people's attention. So in this morning's presentation, I'll be providing a bit of context around these 4 particular trends, and then Patrick will walk you through some of the ways that LiveTiles technology is addressing and bringing solutions with our customers to address the challenges that come out of these trends. So if we can go to the first slide, please, Patrick, around how the employee experience is shifting rapidly from the physical to the digital. For a long time, organizations have used buildings to express our corporate identity and to create that sense of employee connection to company culture. But this is now rapidly shifting to the digital space. There's an acceleration of a trend that's been moving steadily for some time, which is the investment in the digital environment of the employee, and very importantly, the elevation in strategic importance of employee experience. And I would say also the elevation in the understanding of what employee experience really means for organizations. This brings with it, of course, a number of challenges. One of them with this very quick and disruptive sometimes shift to the digital environment can be the erosion of employee commitment. So we need to replicate the physical and social interactions in the digital space and provide that incredible employee experience. There is also the risk of talent flight, of attracting and retaining talent, particularly digital natives and the Gen Z demographic, which is rapidly becoming, the workforce of the future. This issue of talent risk was recently identified in a worldwide survey carried out by PricewaterhouseCoopers as the #1 risk identified by CEOs as a result of COVID-19. Interestingly, that same survey the year before, it figured way down in their list of concerns. So COVID has really focused in on that issue. So we need, therefore, to bring a consumer grade user experience that is mobile first and has a seamless integration and is relevant to the user. There is also the challenge of siloed information and applications. I think we're all aware of this challenge in the digital workplace. So it really calls for us to simplify that employee experience using intuitive tools, more integration, and more importantly, very importantly, data-driven personalization, which is something Patrick will be talking about in his segment. If we can move to the next slide, indeed, we have seen a significant acceleration in the digitalization of work for most, if not all, of our customers. This is partly because the proliferation of tools and the very tangible act of essentially equipping the entire global workforce to work remotely. But it also includes processes and business critical activities such as timelines for project deliveries and change management, which have hit warp speed for many organizations. We're seeing that rapid digitalization has smashed through the resistance to change that might have existed in some organizations, or even that culture of presenteeism, and provided real-world, real-time experiments in the evolution of the digital workplace and the acceleration of digital transformation. But of course, it comes with some challenges. We have the challenge of application and information overload, leading to too much noise and distraction in the workplace. So what we need to do is embed communications into the employee experience, not embedding the employees into the application experience. We need to address the Uber challenge of the different kinds of communications that organizations need to carry out in their day-to-day operations and their quarterly operations, and the functional overlaps that this entails. So it's about enabling people to distribute their content where they collaborate. And this is a really important requirement to reduce that distraction and make the experience much more compatible and intuitive for the employee. I think also that proliferation of data and siloed applications is a related challenge in the digitalization of work. So we need to reduce the technology complexity for everyone. As our CEO often says, we need to make the tools disappear and turn it into an experience. The next trend that we're seeing is around our shared experience in COVID-19, which has thrown another aspect of working life into sharp focus. And that is the fact that there are many frontline and deskless workers doing essential roles and who have continued working on the ground, whether it's in a hospital or on a factory floor or in the hospitality or in the retail sector. When we think about frontline workers, they've always been a bit of a neglected demographic in a lot of digital workplace thinking, and they have their own unique set of challenges. One challenge is that, if you're on the move, you're often out of the loop of information, out of the loop of the workplace conversations. So we need to bring a mobile first solution to organizations that is accessible to everyone and works with Microsoft 365 or whatever that office system might be, platform might be that you're using. Another challenge is often with frontline workers that they may not have a digital ID, and this can mean that they don't have access to all the tools and resources they need to do the job. It can also mean that they don't have that sense of belonging or connection to the organization, to their company. So we must introduce a solution that works for everyone, even if they have no digital ID or no software license. This is the challenge for the frontline workers, that we're not equipping them. Often the workers that are the ones that are most customer facing, and there's numerous lost business opportunities that can drive innovation, that can gather real world intelligence and can boost productivity that we're missing out on. So we must better support and include frontline workers and make them more efficient, which will have a direct benefit to increase customer satisfaction and feedback. And I think for us at LiveTiles, this provides real promise for a more improved, more human workplace culture of inclusion and participation. And this is definitely an issue which is surfacing to the top in all of our conversations with customers over the last year. But as well as helping organizations to better understand their users and to tap into that deeper brain trust and be more innovative, data-driven, competitive, healthy, and productive. The fourth and final trend that I would like to highlight today is the clear realization that we are all very much in the business of battling for people's attention, namely that of our employees in the workplace. We need to learn both the good and the bad from the lessons of social media and the attention economy, especially with regards to how we reduce the noise, be more relevant to our employees at work, and above all, and I think this is critical, value and respect our employees' time and their attention load and their mental health. We need to be champions of our employees' attention and help to free up their time so they can be as creative, collaborative, and productive as possible. Some of these challenges around information overload will be overcome with personalization of the employee experience and being more relevant. The chaotic digital workplace will need to be cleaned up and be where people are and reduce that tech complexity. And we need to help our stressed and fatigued colleagues and eliminate the stress and frustration and create a culture that values employees' attention, time, and mental health. So businesses now recognize that tech has an important role to play in supporting the well-being of employees. I think one of the key learning points is that this is about people and not just about tech. We do need the right tools to understand and facilitate employee well-being and support their time and attention management. But above all, we must strive to improve the overall digital workplace experience and understanding the employee needs, as well as this will be central to valuing their time and attention and helping to be part of a happier and healthier workplace. So on that issue of valuing the attention of our employees, I'd like to hand over to my colleague, Patrick.
Yes, thank you, Paul. And I hope my audio is okay because there's some road work just around the corner. So hopefully there will not be a lot of background noise. Yeah, Paul has mentioned it. There are a couple of challenges on the way with internal communications and the employee experience. And I would like to show you now how we tackle these challenges and how we provide real world solutions as LiveTiles with our intelligent experience platform. And I will do this by just picking out some of the examples that Paul has mentioned. We cannot talk to all of them, but we have a solution to most of them. A technical solution. Some solutions are organizational also, but I think the three examples that I would like to present now will show you what real world challenges you will face if you want to go the way and improve your employee communications and provide a good employee experience, which I think is really a must-have for any company today, and how to solve them. So the first example is the battle for attention. Paul has already mentioned it. we need to provide personalized experiences and relevant content. And I think one of the biggest challenges you have as a communicator is to grasp people's attention when they actually do something else. So most people are very busy all day long with doing their work. They're completing their tasks, and any kind of communication that comes just from the outside in can be perceived as a distraction, right? So I think it's like in marketing. If you want to get people's attentions, you need to be where the people are. And today, sometimes I have the impression that internal comms doesn't work like this. It's like you force people to use a specific tool to communicate, or you force people to go to a specific page in the intranet to look at your message. And if I just think how this would work in marketing, I think it wouldn't work at all. It's like saying people, look, if you want to watch my ad, you have to switch on your TV at 8 o'clock on channel 5, and there you can see my ad and nowhere else. That would never work. So we have come up with a solution that flips this whole situation around by bringing comms into the current work context. If you look at the picture to the right here, you see a very simplistic view of our platform in the middle here. And you see all these platforms and systems and tools that companies are using today to collaborate, to communicate, to also do their work. Very specific solutions like CRMs, ERPs, and so on, but also very generic solutions like the Office platform, Teams, Workplace by Facebook, and other comms platforms. And altogether, the challenge is to actually define your audiences, provide them with an experience that suits their needs, that actually brings the communications that you have to communicate into their work environment, whether it's Teams or whether it's another app, for example, Salesforce, whether it's really a straight intranet portal that it can still be of a value for knowledge workers who are looking for information intensely, whether it's new technologies like Viva from Microsoft with the possibility to present the information in a card, in a new technology interface, or whether it's just a mobile app, because the front line, for example, does not have any of these tools because they're not using them. They just have a mobile phone and they need an app where you can reach them directly. So our approach to this is really to have one platform that lets you communicate from one central location, lets you orchestrate all the content from the platforms that are using, and target this content and communication to all these different experiences that are adapted to the respective audience. So how this can look like is shown here in this little video.
To get people's attention, you need to be where they already are. It is difficult to make people move to the internet just to read the news. That's why we provide you with the ability to target your audience on the device and in the application they're constantly using for doing their work. Your frontline can be best reached on a mobile device. Not only news, but also access to policies and important information, as well as communities, bottom-up communications, chat, and the access to the people directory, provide a comprehensive set of functionality that communicators need, all included in an app. Likewise, information workers are spending their day in Microsoft Teams, sitting in meetings and working on documents. Wouldn't it be perfect if you could reach these people with your news, posts, and events directly in Microsoft Teams? With the LiveTiles platform, you can. But even better, we not only provide a Teams-based app, but also an integration into the activity feed. So new posts automatically push a notification into your feed and make you aware of the new content without context switch. But the LiveTiles offer goes even further than that. With LiveTiles everywhere, we not only bring content to other platforms and applications, but also functionality of your intranet. A typical example of what you always want to have around you are your personal links, your agenda, your profile, or an aggregation of your tasks, with the possibility to directly interact with them. So by not forcing people through a specific front door, but instead enabling communicators to direct their messages directly to the applications and devices people use, we get much more attention.
Okay, so I think this example shows very well how we tackle that problem by actually delivering the information into various experiences. We can make sure that each employee in his or her respective role is reached in a place where he's actually working. So the distraction will be much less if you combine this then with the targeting capabilities from modern intranets, where you can target information based on profiles, for example. You can make sure that, for example, people from marketing will see the messages that are relevant for marketing, whereas people from HR will see the messages that are relevant to HR in their respective app on their respective device. So the second challenge I would like to talk to is digital ID. Paul mentioned it. A lot of frontline workers don't have a digital ID today. And I think during COVID, a lot of companies just found out about that. They just found out that, hey, actually, a big part of our staff doesn't have an email address. They don't have a corporate account. They don't have a license to access any kind of platform in our company. They don't even have a device to do that. All they have is maybe a private mobile phone. And with that, they can't access any corporate information because we are blocking everything with a firewall. So how to communicate with them and how to give them this digital ID? And usually the easiest way is, of course, if you onboard them into your, let's say, Active Directory or People Directory, then they will have such an ID, but that comes at a certain cost. And maybe this cost is too high if you consider that the only thing they actually need is access to some information. They don't need access to Teams. They don't need access to SharePoint. They don't need access to any kind of documents that you're collaborating on in your back office, but they just need access to important news about your company, important alerts maybe. You want to make people aware of things that are important. You want to align people. Maybe you also want to engage them more through an app. And of course, you want to give them access to information they need for everyday work. So to do all that, actually any kind of ID could be used. The problem with most applications is, though, that not any kind of ID is supported. In most cases, you need a corporate email. We have looked at that problem for a very long time, and it is a very complex one because identifying people in a secure way is difficult unless you have certain aspects. We call that security token. You need some kind of token that can actually not be misused, that is unique, and that makes sure your employees are really identified as the right person to have access to some piece of information. But there are other tokens than email addresses. So we came up with a couple of things that we are supporting to facilitate giving people a digital ID. So one way is to support alternative security tokens. You see here an example of a login screen of our employee app LiveTiles Reach, where you can select from 3 alternatives. You can actually select to log in with an organizational ID, which could be anything. Could be just a number out of your HR system that you upload to our platform and create the users based on this number instead of basing it on an email address. So you could come up with your token yourself and provide it to the user in any way appropriate. I mean, if the user doesn't have an email, you can't email any information to them. Maybe you have to send it through a letter, maybe with a payslip. That's an option that many of our customers have used to onboard their people. Then, of course, we also onboard people with normal email. You can use any kind of email address, not only corporate ones. So people can actually sign up with their private email address. That's another option of doing it. And you could also send them just a QR code that contains all the user information already in the code. So they simply have to make a photo of the code with their mobile phone, and the app will automatically open and sign them on. Of course, we also have appropriate processes to make sure that if someone is signs on with a private email, that you can identify the people. Another option is that we can also support multiple identity providers. Maybe people have a Google account, maybe people have an Apple account, and of course, all people who have a corporate account have a Microsoft account. If you use Active Directory, then you automatically have a so-called Microsoft account. So instead of creating new users and managing them, we can use all these identity providers that are out there already, making it also easier for you as a business to manage your users because they're already managed in the Active Directory, for example. And the third example is yet another alternative that is based on mobile numbers. I mean, since the application is based on a mobile phone, it is clear that the user needs that as a minimum. He needs a device, and this device has a number, and this number is also unique. So why not basing the identity on that number? That are three alternatives how we can support alternative security tokens, make it easy to provide digital identities, and to do so in a way that doesn't lead to excessive overhead in managing them. The third and last example are organizational challenges. I think if you look at the journey typically taken when introducing an employee experience platform, or you could also call it a modern internet that goes a little bit beyond what a standard internet does, and also includes the employee journey and includes many processes that you want to facilitate around the employee journey, the well-being, getting people more productive, being more connected, and being more engaged. You have a couple of challenges to overcome that are based or rooted in your organization. And that could be various ones. For example, we have many companies that are very dynamic, companies who constantly buy and sell entities. They buy other companies. And in such a situation, a merger and acquisition situation, for example, it is crucial that you can communicate to everyone because everyone is affected of such an acquisition. There is change and you want to communicate. The only problem is you can't because technically you are limited. Unit A has an intranet, Unit B that you just bought has another intranet, and there is no bridge in between. So you have to communicate twice. Also, another typical problem is that maybe you have a very complex organizational structure with different legal entities, and each legal entity has an own Office 365 tenant, which makes it already impossible to publish a news to the whole company because you can't publish across Office 365 tenants. So a very basic problem becomes a very big one for communicators because it will increase their effort to communicate massively and finally will make it impossible to communicate efficiently. Another problem we encounter from time to time is in companies who have specific areas that need high security. They very often have their own IT, which is a silo that is completely locked against the outside world. And into this silo, it's almost impossible to communicate. There are also other organizational challenges like cross-organizational communications. If you're a big company that is actually a conglomerate of smaller companies, each very individual, each with a completely independent infrastructure, it is very difficult to communicate across all them. Or if you're using an agency model, like insurance brokers or travel agents, very often you have a big central company that is defining the business for a whole bunch of individual agencies that are working for them. And of course, you need to communicate very intensely to all these agencies, but you can't enforce anything on them because they have their individual business. The same is true with franchising. Maybe with a franchising model, you have a little bit more options because in the franchising contract, you have more power than in an agency model, maybe. And another situation is if you have multiple brands and you have individual brands that usually don't work together with each other, but still need information from the company. So let's look at these two challenges and how we solve them. If you look at the picture to the right, you see our employee experience platform, and this is your company. Your company is definitely the first unit we will connect to this platform. So you will get your tenant in our platform, and with this tenant, you will be able to communicate within your company. And connecting a company for us is a matter of minutes. It's just connecting a directory to our platform to the same tenant that you already have. So if you have a sister company that you also want to communicate to, you simply connect that sister company to our platform as well, regardless whether they use the same Office 365 tenant or not, or whether they're not using Office 365, but you do. It doesn't really matter. We simply connect them to our platform and connect them to the same tenant as your main company. And that's all you need to communicate across both units. The same is true if you just buy another company, so the merger and acquisition situation. Very quickly, you connect them to the platform, and regardless how diverse or integrated they are, you can communicate across this unit now as well. Or if you have a frontline where you don't employ your own people, but you're working with contractors, but they also need information from you, you simply connect this contractor to your tenant, and it's done. If you have franchise partners, you simply connect all these franchise partners. We have actually customers who have connected hundreds of units to the same platform and can communicate across these units without any problems. The same is also with individuals. You don't have to connect the whole company, but if you have consultants who tightly work with you and need the same information as your employees, you simply connect your consultants. And they don't need a corporate account for this. Just don't forget that. None of these units need corporate accounts in your company. So no overhead, you simply connect directly their directories or their users. And the same is also if you are an organization that is maybe working with members, or if you're a non-for-profit organization that is working with a lot of volunteers. They're a completely different stakeholder group that you maybe don't want to manage as accounts in your company, and you can't even manage them, but you want to connect, you want to communicate. So here again, same principle. You can connect anyone, any unit, any business, any individual to your tenant and communicate with them. And that brings us to the second problem here. It's the ring-shaped stakeholder structures. Very often, if you want to communicate, you don't want to communicate to all in the same way. Maybe you have an inner ring of stakeholders that is maybe just your board, or maybe your employees as a whole, that need different information than your partners or suppliers, or even the public. Because with our platform, you can also push information to a public-facing website. So really fulfilling this vision of communicating once and then just target any kind of audience you want with this communication. So this could look like this. We can create any kind of groups that span across multiple of these units. So if you say your company and your sister company, and also your frontline and the company you just bought, they should get the same information as your main company. Then you just create a group that is spanning across these units. We call it a ring. You create a ring for these users, and then you communicate to this ring. Maybe you have a second ring that is consisting of your franchising partners. And of course, there are people in your company who also need to have the same information as your franchising partner. So you just include these people into this group and you communicate to them as well. So people in your company will get both from the inner ring and from the franchise ring, all information at one place. Then the third ring could be if you have members that are using your products, that are maybe building a community, you want to communicate to them, you create a group for them, including the people inside your company who need to know about it. And then you can just extend it, for example, your volunteers plus a consultant who's working with your volunteers, and of course, the internal people who are working with the volunteers. And with this, you can regardless of the structure of your organization, you can just build the groups as you need. And for communicators, it will become very easy because they simply can say, this message is for my internal ring and for my volunteers. and push the button and publish it. The third challenge here that has to do with organizational aspects is organizational maturity. Very often, parts of your organization might not be as mature as others, or maybe as a whole, you're at the level where you can't introduce an entire platform with all its aspects and possibilities because it would be too much and overwhelming for your users. That's why we have a modular approach in our platform. So what you see here are all modules that also can be used independently. So you could, for example, start with just an employee app like LiveTask Reach to better include your frontline, and then extend it into a broader employee experience by adding the hub, which makes it possible to build customized portals, dashboards, integrate into other applications, bringing the intranet functionality into your other tools. You could add an intelligent directory, you could add analytics, you could add more modules like LiveTask Vibe that lets you interact with your employees in a very easy way. You could also start at another point. You could also start with just an intelligent directory, because maybe you already have an intranet that suits your needs, but you think your profiles are not good enough and you want to improve them. So an intelligent directory could help there. By being modular, we allow you to start from different starting points corresponding to your maturity, and make sure you're introducing the solution step by step at your pace without overwhelming people. The last challenge is one that we also encounter very often. It's if you have to be compliant with some regulatory or legal requirements. So this could be data residency. Maybe you have a requirement that your data must not reside in certain countries, of course, or in certain regions in the world. It could concern data privacy, could concern certain compliance with data privacy laws like GDPR, or it could just be that you have certain governance requirements also from your internal rules that would enforce you to treat data in a certain way, or also to track certain things. And that's also why our platform has the possibility to cater for all these things. For example, you can choose where your data resides. We have currently 3 data centers that are active where you can build your entire platform with LiveTiles. One is Western Europe, one is the US, the third one is Australia, and we're launching Switzerland at the end of this month. And basically, since we are based on Microsoft Azure, we can also replicate this into any other Azure data location that Microsoft provides. We will do this upon customers' request. So as soon as we have the first customer in a new region that has requirements that requires data to reside in this region, we will just replicate the platform. For us to replicate the entire platform into another region is a matter of a week of effort to do that. So very quickly. Yeah, and with this, I think I have shown you a couple of these challenges that happen or that you will encounter in the real world and happen when you are on the journey to provide such a platform for your business. And I think it's important that you're aware of them, because it's really what you need to solve if you want to get ahead with that. We can help you with this also. We have a professional services team who has a lot of experience with these situations, who has done that before. Maybe you haven't, because it's the first time you introduce an employee experience platform. And yeah, we're happy, of course, to guide you through this journey. And with this, I'm handing back to Paul.
Thank you very much, Patrick, for walking us through that. And just to remind as well, those of you online, to add any questions to the Q&A or the chat, if that's easier. We're already getting a few coming in, and we'll take them at the end. We wanted to say that a lot of what we're discussing here today is contained in an ebook, which we will send to all registrants. It's our digital trends report for 2021. And apart from going through all the trends and insights and how we see the digital workplace evolving, it also comes with some very specific recommendations and checklists to really set you up for success. So we'll be sharing that with you afterwards, or indeed the URL is there if you want to already download it before that. So just as a final slide before we get to the Q&A, I just wanted to take some 3 key considerations by means of wrapping up what we've shared with you briefly here today. First of all, that the hybrid workplace, and there's little doubt that the future of work is hybrid. At LiveTiles alone, we've surveyed our global customer base twice now, once in June of last year and once in December of last year, and an incredible 74% of our global customer base is committing to a hybrid workplace into the future permanently. So there's little doubt. We see that this data coming from Microsoft, from Deloitte, and from many other sources. So this hybrid flexible way of working is certainly the future. And the inclusion of frontline workers, it will put new demands on your employee experience platforms. And indeed, it will be the measure of your success. Number 2, you cannot simply delegate employee experience to a simple or single app. It takes place wherever the user's digital home is. It takes place where the user is. So we need to have that technology in the background, providing that those incredibly important moments for our users and for our employees, and being there where they're needed, regardless of the device, the location, the role of those employees. So that's an incredibly important one, as Patrick mapped out there earlier in the video part of the presentation. And thirdly, employee experience must respect people's attention and help users to cut through the noise while reducing the tech complexity. We want users to have a stress-free, valuable experience at work. We want them also to be able to connect not just with the tools and resources that they need to do their jobs efficiently, effectively, and safely, but to connect with each other and have those social and human connections as well. So all of these considerations are what we would like to leave you with today. We will be sending out the Digital Trends report to everyone. And thanking you for your attention up to this point, and we'll just take a couple of questions that have come in. Patrick, I think most of these questions will be for you. The first one comes from a colleague online here who's from the Netherlands, and she said all citizens have a digital ID, a unique personal digital ID from the government. Could that be used as the digital ID that you talked about for frontline workers or deskless workers?
Yeah, that's actually a very interesting question. It's good to hear that in the Netherlands already everybody has such a digital ID. In Switzerland, for example, we don't. We are extremely slow with that. But there are other countries, certainly, like Estonia, for example. They have been among the first countries in the world, I think, who have introduced that. And definitely that's a possibility, because if you have such an ID, you have a so-called identity provider behind that. And we can connect to these identity providers. We support some standards also, like OpenID Connect, for example, and use this as an ID as well. And as soon as the identity provider fulfills certain minimum requirements that make sure that the identity cannot be misused or misleading, we can use this, yes. So that could be a very powerful way, actually, of onboarding people, by just saying, use your ID you have from the government.
Very good. And a related question, Patrick, again to the digital ID. So that's something of interest to people. And I think this is more linked to the digital ID on regarding the software licenses and the costs that are associated with that. How can I make my workplace more inclusive without huge license costs? There's a growing number of our employees that without a corporate ID anymore, such as freelancers and contractors. So how can this person make their workplace more inclusive without incurring the huge costs that may come with software licenses?
Yeah. So first and foremost, by just buying what is really required. I think if you look into the discussion we have with many customers who are thinking about licensing Teams also for their frontline, there are more economic Teams licenses, for example, that Microsoft provides for frontline workers. But then if you look at it in detail, it's not really what you need, because you don't need Teams for working on documents, for example, for your frontline. And your frontline will not go and do some online meetings all day long like your information worker. So I'm wondering whether it is really a question of price or not rather a question of value. If you have to pay a license for something just to get this ID, for example, because with this license, of course, you also get the ability to manage the user in the Active Directory and actually give him an ID, then it's just too much. So in our case, we have also looked at this, and it's very important to look at it very thoroughly, because if you build a platform like LiveTiles, you have to make sure that your platform can serve people who don't have this license. This, for example, Teams license. It's also true for other platforms. If you don't need this functionality, you don't want to buy the license. So in our case, what we offer is a very cheap license that gives you access to the things people really need, which means access to communications, access to important information that you just distribute to all the people. They don't need to collaborate on this information, but they need to consume it, of course, like forms or regulations or policies they need to read. That's all included in our platform. And this part of the platform is completely independent from, for example, SharePoint or any other things. It's standalone. It can be used on its own. And it means you only need to pay for what you really use. The second thing is if it comes to volunteers, if it comes to other scenarios where you have, for example, a membership organization with tons of members, tens of thousands of members, maybe who just use the platform very rarely, or if you want to communicate to people, maybe even on a public facing website where you don't even know how many users you will have, we also offer a consumption-based model for these kind of users. So basically what you do, you have a normal user-based license for your, let's say, full-time real employees who use the platform all the time. And for all the others that only use it from time to time, you have a consumption-based model. I think that's much fairer, and it's much easier, of course, also to calculate in cases where you don't know the exact usage and where you don't know the exact number of users.
That's great. Thanks a million, Patrick. I think actually just listening to the response there and seeing the interest in this topic coming up in the questions, it could indeed be a standalone webinar on its own, and maybe that's something we should come back to. And here's the third and final question for this morning, which could also possibly be a webinar all on its own. How do you solve for higher employee engagement with a globally distributed and culturally diverse workforce? So a question for the times that are in it.
Yeah. So there are many things, many aspects, I think, that you need to look at if you have this challenge. So, for example, there's the language aspect, there's the culture aspect, and I think you have to use tools that are prepared to automate as much as possible in this regard to reach everyone. So, for example, the language aspect, if you communicate in one language, let's say it's English, but you have people who are not able to understand English so well, you need to translate your message. And of course, if you have to translate everything manually, it will take too much time to really communicate to everyone. So that's why we, for example, include automatic translation. So people can actually define their preferred language, whether it is German or Finnish or Hungarian or Japanese, doesn't matter. They define their preferred language, and they will automatically see all content in their preferred language, including comments from other users, including the chat. When you chat with other people, you can chat in your own language, and your colleague can answer in his language. So it will help actually connect people who are of a different language, have a different culture, are in different places in the world, and all of a sudden they can communicate with each other because of technology. Of course, there is also other aspects that are more organizational. In the platform we have, you can define the groups of communicators, the groups of audiences in a way that makes information relevant to this specific group. So if you're communicating out to the whole world and you're communicating the same message to everyone, that can be useful if you have to communicate something really big and something really important that everybody needs to know. But in most of the cases, as a communicator, you're just communicating with part of your entire audience, maybe just with one location, one region, one function. As you see, it already has an overlap. So there's a geographical component, there is an organizational component, there's a functional component, there can be even more than that. I remember the rings of communications, for example, that I mentioned before. And it's very important that you have a tool that is able to cope with this complexity, to define these target audiences. And that's someone who needs to do it, who needs to be a communications expert. And then let's say all the editors who are creating content, they can benefit from this definition, because from their perspective, they only have their segment in mind. And they will be automatically linked with their segment automatically. So if I'm communicating from HR with Europe, and maybe can sub-segment into Germany, Switzerland, and France, then I will just see this. I won't have a choice of 500 different audiences. I will just see mine. I can say, okay, this message is now for whole Europe, or this one is just for Germany. And that's what's important to make solution really useful, because otherwise you're making it too complex for the communicators, which will lead to non-communication, because it will take too much time or too much training. So I think these two aspects are good examples of what you need to look for when you have this challenge of communicating with a diverse global audience.
Absolutely. As mentioned as well, it's a topic all on its own in terms of, you know, what we were learning and how we're addressing it. It's a key concern of our global customer base. And just thinking of two customers that we spoke to recently, one needs the ability to drive what they call organic storytelling in their organization. So essentially the colleagues on the front lines are in the field, that they can create and share content internally. So it empowers employee voice. It's more authentic. It's less top down and corporate. So that's definitely something that helps to drive engagement. And secondly, a customer that said to us very recently in the UK, they love the platform because it allows them to have fun and do business at the same time. And I don't think we should forget that. I mean, it is also very important that the technology enables people to connect socially, have fun, and really that will have added and much greater benefits then for the engagement, and people will feel more comfortable coming back to the platform, not just for work, but also for connections, for human connections.
Yeah, that's absolutely a topic maybe also of its own, but I think the four main pillars such a platform should cover is connecting people, so connectivity, engagement, productivity, and well-being. And all these fours interact with each other. And if you're missing one, the other three will not perform as you would like them to perform. And I think that's important to see. Yeah, that's what we're doing. We provide a platform that addresses these four pillars.
Very good. So listen, Patrick, I think we've come to the end of our time. We've had some great questions. So thank you so much to everybody for joining this morning. As mentioned, we'll be sharing our digital workplace trends 2021 report with you after the presentation this morning, with the on-demand link as well, I'm sure. And I think, Patrick, from you and I, that's it, is it? Is it over and out from us?
Yeah, I think so. That's it. Thank you very much also from my side, and have a nice day.
Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Yes, thank you very much for this insightful presentation. And thank you to our partner LiveTiles for this webcast today. Also, of course, thank you everyone who took the time today and joined our webcast. Now I wish you all a great day, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.